All right. Hello, Arturo. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do here at PPPL?
Absolutely. I'm Arturo Dominguez. I'm the head of the Science Education Department here at PPPL. I've been the head for the last couple of years. I've been in the department for 11 years. And we run all the public engagement and the workforce development. So we handle the internship program. We bring y'all into the lab throughout the year, especially during the summer, and we administer all that. But we also run workshops. We have a lab where we do demos and remote control experiments. We interact with the general fusion and plasma community to lead public engagement events and workforce development events. Both locally and nationally and even internationally.
You also visit schools and stuff and talk with the students.
Yeah, we do some school visits.
Yeah, that's great. So for those who don't know, could you explain nuclear fusion and what are the promises it delivers?
Fusion, yes, absolutely. So fusion is what happens in the inside of all the stars, right? So it's when two small atoms combine together the nuclei of two small atoms combine together to form a bigger nuclei and a neutron in most of the reactions that we study. And that reaction releases energy, right? So that's what happens in the inside of all stars, right? And that's how all the matter beyond hydrogen has been created. All the matter at helium, lithium, everything across the periodic table was formed because in the inside of stars, fusion happened to create the bigger elements, right? So what we're trying to do in our lab and the fusion community around the world is trying to do is to reproduce that effect in the lab to create usable energy that we can harness.
Yeah, that's great. So this is probably obviously the goal of PPL as well, is to create this fusion and try to harness it and hopefully make it sustainable and use it commercially.
That's one of our big missions, right? It's to help with the scientific and technological development of fusion energy, both for electricity and for other applications.
Okay. So obviously for me, this is really exciting. This is kind of what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
But for the general public, a lot of times people they usually are told this holy grail technology that will come along and solve all the world's problems. But a lot of times some of these technologies usually end up being a huge letdown, and it turns out just to be completely hype. For example, I remember graphene when it first came on the scene,
right?
And it was hyped beyond reality,
right.
And the hype was so insane. How can we be assured that this will not be the case for fusion?
I mean, well, one thing is, that's sort of a multiple question, right? That one of them is, how can we control the hype, right? I think there will be hype, and for example, in December with ignition, there was a lot of misconceptions about what that meant, and folks saying, that means that electricity out of fusion is around the corner. And that is not the case, and that's not what the scientists have been saying. Fusion ignition was a huge deal, and it is a huge deal for the scientific community, but it doesn't mean that all the challenges have been resolved. There's still a lot of challenges. So I think, is the question, can we control the hype? And I think the answer to that is we can try to keep the hype down by educating the public and by listening to the public and engaging with and being transparent about the work that we do, right? If we were to say, okay, so there's no more hype, we just say the facts, and we do believe in the promise of fusion, that it has that it doesn't have greenhouse. It's not that we believe it. The technology does not lead to greenhouse gases. Fusion fuel is practically inexhaustible. Those things are true. It is the radioactivity problem is completely different than with fission. You don't have to dig up. You don't have to dig underground vast majorities of very long-term fission waste. Although, not to say that there isn't radioactivity. Tritium is radioactive and things get activated. So we have to be clear that that's something we have to deal with, right? Having said all that, if fusion energy is deployed, and if it's deployed in a way that's equitable, in a way that, you know, that doesn't repeat a lot of the errors that have been done in deploying other energy sources, like who gets availability to them, you know, where is the waste being, you know, what are we doing with the waste, all that, then it has the potential of being revolutionary, of really contributing to decarbonization of the world and being a source of energy potentially for the world, right? Now, how it's deployed is a completely different question, right? And so we, as people within the fusion ecosystem, have to put our foot on the scale and say, you know, what are we going to do with the deploying? But that's a whole other thing. I think that's a very broad answer to their question.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty loaded question, so you did a pretty good job. All right, so nuclear fusion is still like in its research and development phase, and like the climate crisis, it's getting pretty desperate. The goal initially was to avoid the 1.5 degree threshold, but I mean, some say it's already too late, some say we already crossed it. Nuclear fusion shows that it could be like very promising and rewarding, but there still is a lot of time needed to like produce this energy, and we're like barely holding on to the 1.5 degrees. So how would you like address this dilemma?
I mean, I think the answer is, if somebody's telling you that fusion energy is going to save us from climate change, I think that's delusional. I think the impact, I mean, the impact from climate change is already happening. Like, we're already having extreme weather events already. There are extreme summers that are killing a lot of people. So we are already suffering from climate change, right? So I don't think fusion will be ready in time to fix that, right? But as you heard, like I think, and I stand by it, it will be essential for decarbonization of the future, right? We need to, you know, reverse some of these effects, and we need to create these alternative energy sources. Now, you know, if one of these private companies develops commercially available fusion, and all the infrastructure around energy gets resolved really quickly, I would be pleasantly surprised. I think in the next 10 years, I would be pleasantly surprised. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen in a longer time scale. I don't think we're going to deploy electricity. I mean, I'm almost certain we're not deploying fusion-created electricity within the next 15 years, right? So, and that's the time scale that we're talking about when we're talking about the 1.5, right, degrees. So, but not because of that doesn't mean that we should just put up our hands and say, look, this isn't going to help us. Because it will. If we're serious about, like, if we believe we're going to be alive, like humanity is going to exist after 20, 30 years, we're going to need all available energy sources that don't create greenhouse gases available. The population is growing, energy demand is still growing, and we need everything. So we need solar, we need wind. In my opinion, we need nuclear, like fission. But we also need fusion. I mean, we need to decarbonize, and fusion is going to play a major role.
Yeah, I think fusion is going to play a huge role. I think some people, like, they get a bit lost on track when they just, like, kick their feet up and say fusion is going to unlimited energy. I think, it is, like, going to bring a lot of good, but in the meantime, you also need to do lifestyle changes. You also need to help decarbonize, and
government needs to put in regulations about being strict about carbon emitting technologies, about vehicles and things like that, right? I think it has to be a concerted effort by the world of, we got to cut back, right? I mean, having said that, it's not looking like I think, as I said, climate change is happening already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we have any chance, we need to develop all of these technologies.
Yeah, and it's happening faster than we expected.
It's happening faster than we expected. It's effectively a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, the Industrial Revolution played a huge role in the advancement of like the country. When I go to like Egypt,
in your opinion, like that's a
yeah,
fact.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The rest would be in my opinion, though. I mean, when I go to Egypt and like all these places, like in my opinion, nuclear fusion could really transform like the country that gets their hands on nuclear fusion first. It would really like transform the country. I mean, with all the promises being made, unlimited energy and stuff. And I also, I mean, if we do develop, I also want to take it to Egypt and like help industrialize a lot of these countries. I mean, some people who live in America, they tend to like kind of forget a lot of these other countries. They just get electricity. They just got a lot of this stuff we've been using for this amount of time. And especially since we're like lowering on the carbon and stuff, a lot of these countries, they can't use the carbon to start industrializing. So they're all being limited. I think nuclear fusion is really...
it can be a way forward, yeah.
I think this could be bigger than the Industrial Revolution, in my opinion.
For a lot of countries?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I won't opine about the scale of it, but I think it could be revolutionary if it's done right? And when I was talking about doing it in a just way, that's kind of what I was saying. So you started the question by saying, the first country that gets fusion will have a dramatic change. I mean, I think the first one will, and also the second and the third. I think just having just deploying fusion power plants in a country is going to be, I think it's going to be huge, right? And because of all the benefits that fusion energy and having electricity will do. I think that yes, it could if everything else also works right? Because let's say your example of Egypt, right? Let's say you build a fusion power plant, right? But then you don't have a grid that could communicate the energy to poor towns, right? Because maybe it's built really close to Cairo, and Cairo gets all the energy benefit, but then the rural towns far away don't get it. Sure, but it's inequitable, right? So even within the countries, it can be inequitable, right? So I do think, I mean, not to derail nor deflate your enthusiasm. I do think that a base load, the development of base load energy sources can be revolutionary for the development of a country. There's a plot about like energy consumption versus standard of living, and it's totally correlated. It's one-to-one correlated. It's not one-to-one correlated, but it is monotonically correlated, right? As you move out of poverty, you require more energy, or reversing causality, getting more energy in the right way will move people out of poverty, right? If everything is done right. So I agree with you. I think having energy sources, reliable energy sources that don't contribute to global to climate change, and that don't create local pollution, right, would be great, right, and could be revolutionary.
Yeah. So just talking about, we'll take a step from fusion. We're going to talk about PPPL for a bit.
Yeah.
So when like an application comes across your desk for like an internship here, like what do you or your peers really look into the most that helps your decision making? That's
a complex question. I mean, I think there's no one thing.
Yeah.
Right. One is, of course, grades. Right. We want to make sure that that you can show that you can go through a learning experience and do okay. If you have bad grades, okay, you might have bad grades. Is there a reason why you had bad grades, right? Is there some justification, right? So of course that experience, what previous experience you have, right? That's obviously something. What skill set do you already have,
Mm-hmm.
right? That because we don't want to throw you somewhere where you're having to start from zero, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to benefit nor your mentor nor yourself, because you're going to have to learn everything from scratch while
Mm-hmm.
you're having to actually work on a project.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. But also like interest and enthusiasm, and for example, in your case, like I remember your application. You were very enthusiastic in working in something to do with thrusters or
Yeah.
and developing skills, electronic skills and all this. So we worked with you. We're like, okay, does this sound right? Does this sound okay? And then we accepted you, but then even throughout after we accepted you, we trying to match what it is
Mm-hmm.
that your best interests are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is like, is this a good opportunity for you? Would it be useful for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Would you be a good match for a project or mentor? And is this something that there's potential for you doing in the future, right? We also want to attract people, hopefully with a chance of staying in the field, right?
Yeah.
So one thing is, if you apply to say, I want to, I love biophysics, right? But I want to
Mm-hmm.
take a summer off and do something completely different before I go back to biophysics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I'm glad that you're that you're interested in other things, but we also want to feed the workforce demand of our field, which is big. We have a big workforce demand. Yeah,
For sure. So, who was your greatest influence?
My greatest influence. So, there's several answers to that. I think what really got me into physics was actually Hawking's Brief History of Time.
Oh, okay.
That was super impactful for me,
Mm.
right? And that got me into physics. I actually decided to come to the U.S. because I'd learned about Feynman and about the Feynman lectures. I just for some reason I wanted to go actually to Caltech, but I ended up not going there. But nonetheless, that was sort of the idea of getting a U.S. physics education really got me here. Fusion was actually one of my undergraduate advisors, Professor Ken Gentle at UT Austin. I worked with him and actually Roger Bankston, two professors in the physics department that got me interested in plasma and in fusion. They were really really great, and really got me into fusion. During my graduate studies, there's a lot of inspirational folks at MIT, but really when it came to deciding my path, my current boss actually was a huge influence in me because he had this position at this lab of science education, and I applied and I got it, and he really got me into what it means to be in science education, what it means to be in workforce development, and really has mentored me into the science educator that I am. So really, it's different spots. And Dr. Andrew Zwicker.
Okay.
Yeah, here at the lab.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome before?
Oh, all the time. Yes. I mean, at MIT, the grad students were amazing, right? And so that was, that was rough. I think changing into the field that I am now, in which I'm not doing active research, but where I'm constantly in contact with folks that are doing research, every once in a while I'm like, maybe I should be doing that research, or, should I really be here? All that. That totally happened. Yeah.
Does it ever get better over time usually?
Yeah. At this point, after you find your niche and you get a few wins under your belt, and you develop what it is that you're doing and keep on taking that route, I think it really helps.
Yeah, so those who experience it should probably be patient and keep doing what they're doing. And
I mean, if you feel that what you're doing is can improve, yes. I mean, you've got to also be realistic. Maybe you're not doing what you what you should be doing. You know, maybe you don't. You know, it's not something you want to do, or so there's got to be an equilibrium, right?
Yeah.
You can't just give up and say this is hard and I'm uncomfortable, so I'm not going to do it. There's gonna be like long nights, and there's gonna be frustration, all that, regardless of what you do, right? But you also have to get to the point in which you know yourself enough that you're like, okay, this isn't going the direction it should be going, and I got to be realistic. You know, I'm gonna change to something else, right? So and that's already a privilege, right? If you are in a position that you can change, right, you've got to accept that there's privilege there and saying, okay, I'm within a space that I can do this, right? I mean, choosing this academia and this field, like we're already in a position of privilege versus, you know, folks that can't, you know, that can't get into this, you know, a field that gives so much buffer, right? That gives you so many opportunities, right? I think that we got to recognize that this is, you know, this is cushy in a way that you can have so many opportunities and you have so many resources at your disposal, right? In academia and in STEM and in technology, I think a lot of that happens.
Yeah. Like you go into like an engineering class and like everybody's really comparing themselves to each other, and it's a bit of a problem sometimes.
Right.
So, how can a motivated student who wants to be a scientist or engineer at PPPL get here?
How can a motivated student? I mean, this won't guarantee you getting here, right? But what is it? Plans are useless, but planning is essential. That's the little thing. So you can make a plan of like, I'm going to do these steps, and then I'm going to end up at PPPL. I recommend that you do that, right? With the idea that you're probably not going to get to where you want to go, right? Because plans are important. What is it? Plans are critical, but no, plans are useless, but planning is critical, right?
Yeah. So
if you're thinking I want to get there, definitely, you know, learn how to code. If you're in school, if the path that you're going is a research path, right? Then learn how to code, right? Read up on the subject. Get a skill set. Be sure to get good grades if you can, right? Don't skip class, like things like that. Like do like the basic of like be a good student kind of thing, but also like, you know, dedicate a little bit of extra time to what is the skill set that's required for that, right? And there's not one skill set for fusion, right? And remember, I started with if it's research path, right? Because also something that we need for fusion is technicians, and we need people that are really smart in economic sense, like entrepreneurs. We need entrepreneurs. We need strong legal minds because there's a lot of regulation, right? So it really depends what your field is, but I can assure you there are many expertise that are needed to develop fusion, right? So if what you want to do is to help develop fusion, from almost anywhere that you are right now, you can find a path forward, right? There's a lot of resources out there. Like we have that intro course that you attended, right? All of the lectures for that are online for the last 10 years, right? So if you want to, you can, you know, sit down for like 100 hours of, even more than 100 hours of lectures, right? So you can listen to them, read into them, look at slides, and also just read into what it is that's needed. So, but again, that's privilege, right? Not everybody has that, right? Has that time on their hands to do this. So it really, I would say, you know, it is like taking the time to learn about it, right? And to learn a skill set on it and find out where the opportunities are in the field that you want to do, right? I'll use this moment to plug. We have I co-lead a website that is community run called usfusionenergy.org, usfusionenergy.org, and there are all the jobs available for US fusion, right? This is private companies, this is academia, this is national labs, and it's research, engineering, technicians, administrative staff, HR, communications, right? All of those jobs are posted there.
All in one place. Yeah.
All in one place. So if you're interested in a job for fusion, that's a great place to go. And you'll see, if you just scan through all the jobs, all the different types of backgrounds that are needed and that we're looking for in our ecosystem.
What's the website called again?
usfusionenergy.org.
usfusionenergy.org.
Yep.
Right. So, this one is for fun. What is your favorite Colombian dish?
That, I think, is the best question you've asked. What is my favorite Colombian dish? That's a hard question. I really like mondongo, which is tripe. It's tripe. I think that's really good. I think we make it really good. I like pan de bonos. Pan de bonos. It's like a little pastry, a cheese pastry. That's really good. Yeah, I think those are my favorite. There is avena helada, which is like an oat drink that's served it's served cold. It's really refreshing.
I heard the fruits in Colombia are like a lot better. Like
the fruits in Colombia are fantastic. Yes. Yeah.
All right, so last one. This is a hypothetical one. So you're at the United Nations and all the world leaders are present and listening, and you have less than 30 seconds to speak. Like, what would you say?
Oh, Jesus. Fusion energy is here. Mm-hmm. And fusion energy is revolutionary. And it's, it requires a lot of research, but it can really change the world. And it's an international endeavor. So everybody should be joining it, and it would be developing it would be something that raises all boats. Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty good.
All right. Awesome.
I think we're done. Oh, we've been recording for 27 minutes.
Yeah, man.